Hey guys, how's it going? And happy Friday. I hope all of you are good. I just got done posting a video to this channel talking about a huge victory in the United States Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. I have it right here. The Fifth Circuit has just said that bump stocks are not machine guns, shooting down the Trump bump stock ban. This is huge, guys. Like huge, like in all caps, 10 exclamation points for several reasons, as I discussed in that video, and I'm going to go through a little bit deeper dive here. As the common saying goes nowadays, this hearing, this ruling is literally like based in the Constitution, based in actual reality, based in common sense, and I'm really excited to go over some of this. It's a huge, huge blow to bureaucracy, and I think this might be the case that promulgates up to the Supreme Court that might shoot down literally almost everything that we're dealing with right now. Because if you guys remember, and there's a few of you still watching right now, this is a small channel, but I'm talking when it was really, really small, when there might be 15, 20 people watching, and I had maybe a few hundred subscribers. That's when Trump banned bump stocks summarily, arbitrarily, capriciously, outside of the rule of law. A tyrannical edict, quite frankly. And I said at that time, I said, look, this is about bump stocks, but it's about so much more than bump stocks. It's about virtually everything. It has everything to do with what is the rule of law in the United States of America? Does Congress make law? Or does the executive branch and 3 4-letter agencies who are seemingly accountable to nobody? You don't vote for them. You don't know who most of them are. However, with this bump stock ban, quote, precedent that the ATF and the Department of Justice tried to set, it opened the pathway for them now saying that a piece of plastic, this being a Sharpie highlighter, could be a firearm. Anything could be a firearm. A block of plastic, a piece of aluminum, a piece of whatever. Very, very scary and crazy stuff. Also, we're right on the eve. We're in the 11th hour of this so-called pistol brace ban. Something that's right in the face of the National Firearms Act. Now, here's the problem. This is stacking problems on top of problems, and that's why this court case is so refreshing. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people, that's me and you. That's regular old people. But you guys need to stop looking at yourselves as regular people, by the way. It's not the government that matters. It's you that matters. And this is your republic if you're going to keep it. So the right of the people, you, all of you, quite frankly, the only thing that matters in this country, and you're all very important. And here's my challenge to you. It's time for us to all start acting like it and asserting our power and asserting the will of the people. And the right of people just like me and you to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, which makes the National Firearms Act repugnant to the Constitution. And as Marbury v. Madison said, all laws repugnant to the Constitution are void. Well, after a long train of abuses and usurpations, we have the National Firearms Act in 1934, the Gun Control Act of 1968, and many others. So those laws are unconstitutional, not in my opinion, but in the Founding Fathers' opinion, because they didn't write the right to keep and bear some arms, non-military arms, this, that, all these things, all these perversions that we hear of what the Second Amendment actually says today. No. It was quite simple. It said, don't tread on me. Don't tread on my rights. We want to be a free state. And since we want to be free, the only way that's going to be possible is for our right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's literally what it says and literally what it means. And we all know that. And it seems so often that people in government don't realize that. Well, we find ourselves in a situation where stuff's been degrading for almost 250 years. And I've said this before, and we always have to put this into perspective. We can't clean up in one day what took almost 250 years for us to de-evolve into. But we're slowly digging our way out. And there's some positive things going on right now. Of course, there's many negative things too, but there's some positive things. And the reason why I do these streams is to try to encourage all of you. Because we only have the power that we're willing to assert. We only have the power to throw off a tyrannical government if we can form a consensus. And I don't want us to agree on most things. We can disagree on almost everything, actually. But if we can all finally agree that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and this is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and the only reason the government would exist at all is to protect our natural rights. That among these, not limited to, but among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if we can just agree on that, that's a really, really good start. And we have a chance of taking this country back. Now, even within these unconstitutional gun control laws, the Trump bump stock ban flew right in the face of even those. You see, the tyrannical National Firearms Act, it wasn't tyrannical enough for Donald Trump. And the GCA wasn't tyrannical enough for Donald Trump. Now, I wonder what James Madison would have said about that. Well, we know what Thomas Jefferson said about that. These guys in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, they went back to the Constitution. They talked about lenity. They talked about things that are very, very important, that are amongst the most important things that it means to be an American, and what law is, and what the rule of law is. This was, and you guys should go watch my video. It's a more concise version of what I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight. I was able to boil down the most important parts of this case in 12 minutes. I couldn't do it in 3 or 4 minutes, guys. But in 12 minutes, I was able to go through basically the implications of this. But this is the en banc panel, meaning the full panel. 16 judges in the Fifth Circuit, which is in New Orleans, Louisiana, or Louisiana, if you live down there. Shout out to all the people who live in the Fifth Circuit. Not an attorney, not giving legal advice, but this is going to be case law or precedent in the Fifth Circuit, not in the Sixth Circuit, not in any of the other 13 circuits, just in this one. However, we now have a split in the circuits. And that's very important. And it's often a determinative factor whether the Supreme Court will grant cert or certiorari. Meaning the Supreme Court could take this up now that we have a split between the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, meaning they don't agree with each other. And this could shoot down not only the bump stock ban, but in my opinion, virtually all of this we're dealing with right now. Very, very important. Now, there's some other things too that are going on right now. The House of Representatives, the 435 people in Washington, D.C., that actually technically don't exist right this minute. Now, I have C-SPAN up over here. I'm going to see what's going on. But unless they voted in record time, as far as I know, there is no United States House of Representatives technically, or there's no sitting House of Representatives. Technically, all of the representatives are considered representative elects right now. What, 13 votes? Still cannot get the majority for what they thought was going to be the shoo-in. The former minority leader, now technically just a congressman-elect, is technically what he is. At this exact moment, it could change within minutes or hours. McCarthy from California. And you know what this is showing me right now? I work a lot, guys. This is not my job. I work 2 other jobs. I own 2 very small businesses, and I do this as much as I can. But I've been trying to just take the pulse of what people are talking about throughout America right now. And there's debate over who the speaker should be. But almost every normal person that I know or that I've seen online is saying not McCarthy, not the establishment, not the swamp. And there's a lot of other people who are sitting here saying, you know what? Every day that there's no Speaker of the House means the House can't swear in. They can't start their sessions. And it's one more day that they're not sitting there treading on your natural rights. Because in so many cases, in almost all cases, actually, and this is very unfortunate, but it's become obvious at this point to most of us. Whereas the Declaration of Independence says that to secure these rights, the government is instituted among men. That's when I summarize it by saying the only reason the government is supposed to exist at all is to protect your natural rights. But instead they tread and they tread and they write 5,700-page omnibus bills in the middle of the night in a hole somewhere. Nobody gets to see it. The people elected to the People's House in the United States House of Representatives are handed cases, copy paper cases full of reams of paper worth of bills that are all just schmooed together. 1,000, 7,000 earmarks. I mean, just anything you can think of that's in there. Let's do gender studies in Pakistan. Let's not protect the southern border of the United States, but let's build a wall in the Middle East. Let's study the effects of the sexual promiscuity of penguins when they're on cocaine. That's actually something Rand Paul has brought to the floor many times in the Senate. So they write these bills and they promulgate promulgations upon promulgations of earmarks of money going here, there. And it makes your head spin. And at the end of the day, you don't even need to read the 5,000 pages. You know it's not for the American people. You know it's nothing that's going to help you. It's not going to help you when you go to the grocery store and it's hard to afford to buy a pound of ground beef or bacon. Heck, to even buy a pound of rice is hard for a lot of people with the inflation and the times that we're in right now in this country. But it never seems to help you. They'll pass a so-called Inflation Reduction Act while inflation is soaring, even though they keep changing the definition of it every day. So a lot of people have basically sat back and said, yeah, we don't know exactly what they're doing there in this swamp. DC is literally and figuratively a swamp. Like it's actually a swamp that had to be drained to build the buildings that are there. I don't know if you guys knew that. So it's both literally natural swampy terrain and it's figuratively a swamp. And there's swamp creatures that live within there. And they're not there to ensure or to preserve or to defend your rights. It seems like they're there for themselves and they only exist to perpetuate their own existence. Well, we've had gridlock for a few days now. And a lot of people are just sitting back saying, you know what? Every day that they're not meeting in session is one more day that we get to preserve a little bit of our liberty, a little bit of our freedom. They're not treading on us when they can't vote. Now, there were originally 21 dissenters. It's now down to, I believe, 6. They're going to be doing a vote here any minute. I'm going to come over here, actually, and hit mute and see what's going on in C-SPAN out of the corner of my eye, because I was going to talk more about this tonight. But I think now, with the breaking news of the bump stock ban, I want to kind of focus on that, while at the same time, this House of Representatives, so far not being able to elect a Speaker of the House, is a big, big deal. And we talk about this. We talk about what is politics and what is culture. And although I didn't invent the saying, I like to talk about it here. And I do truly believe that politics is downstream from culture. And the fact that there's even a handful still at this point of representatives saying no. The mandate from the people in our district, the mandate from the American people is don't tread on me. We don't want business as usual in Washington, D.C. We don't want it to be where we have a coin. And this is a Mexican Libertad given to me by my friend Band Talk. What's happening, Band Talk? Shout out to you and your channel, man. Where this may be the Republicans on this side that we might end up voting for in many cases because they're the lesser of two evils. Talked about this a lot on this channel. And this other side is the Democrats. Now, the Democrats want to undermine the Constitution as fast as they can. First slowly, then suddenly, and now at the speed of sound, and then it seems like at the speed of light. Quite frankly, faster than that, probably. Everything they do is undermining your liberty, your natural right to keep and bear arms, your freedom of speech. And then the Republicans are basically kind of like, whoa, slow down, Democrats. We want to control the people too. We just have to kind of put a little sticks in your spokes every once in a while. Mitch McConnell says, hold on there. You can't violate their rights, Chuck Schumer, at 100 miles an hour. We need to make a backroom deal where we're going to put some speed bumps up. Then you can only violate them 30 miles per hour. You'll go talk to all your people and say, look, we passed this, this, and this. And then I'll go to all my people and say, look, we slowed down the Democrats a little bit. We compromised. Democrats wanted to ban all guns. Look at us. We're Republicans. We said you can only do these 7 things, but they wanted 100 things. So it was actually a victory. It was a compromise. Now, look, expecting somebody to actually believe that requires the listener to be dumber than the speaker. And that's why I started off this stream tonight saying, no, we get it. We know what's going on. The American people, they're dumb to a point, but they ain't that dumb. You know what I mean? And certainly everybody who's been hanging out on these streams for weeks and weeks, and I guess it's turned into years, you guys are actually very intelligent people. It's like, no, I want it where there's we the people, and if it's a party, if it's a group, if it's a whatever that is there to preserve our natural rights, that's the ones that I want to get behind. I don't want them to be on the same coin. Because when you're on the same coin, yeah, there's two sides of it, but you're just so adjacent. It's just so close to comfort. Look, this hasn't happened since 1923. They all keep saying like that's a bad thing. And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. This is a very, very important decision. And yes, I want the Republicans over the Democrats. I've talked about that many times. Although I've been very fair, and it's hard for me to truly express my opinion on this, but those of you that have listened to me a lot know my thoughts on this. No, I'm not saying the Republicans are the answer. They're a huge part of the problem, but they are less worse. I'm talking on the federal level. When it gets down to the local levels, things change a lot. There's a lot more good people in office on the local level, and that's where we're going to continue to focus on this channel as this year goes on. By the way, I hope all of you are having an awesome new year. This bump stock case is awesome. You guys being here is awesome. But look, if something's less worse is less worse than more worse. And since this has been going on for 250 years, we have to first slow it down. You first have to slow down the beast. Slow it down enough where we can try to corral it. Then we destroy it, which is throw off the tyrannical government and institute a new government that we feel will be most likely to affect our safety and happiness. That's what Thomas Jefferson said, and there's a lot of wisdom in that. And there's little things that happened over the years that got us to where we are. And there's little things that might be big things, but it's a bunch of little things mixed with some bigger things that combine to actually create what's going on and to redirect the flow of where this country's going to head. And people say it's a bad thing, like, oh my gosh, this hasn't happened in 100 years. I'm like, it's about darn time. Why did it take 100 years since the last time that some representatives actually cared about the people that were in their districts and actually stood up and said, no, my people elected me. Usually they have about 800,000 constituents in the United States House of Representatives, much less than your state representative. By the way, I encourage you guys, we have to attack this on all levels. And I don't mean attack like in a bad way. I mean in a good way. Attack evil, and we need to support and uplift and uphold freedom and liberty. When you get down to the state level, it's a lot less than that. I'm going to be spending all day, January 11th, next week, in the Michigan State Capitol, hanging out with my friend and my no longer elect, my new state representative, Jamie Thompson. She's passionate about the right to keep and bear arms. Look, there's many things that people run on. And she said, the Second Amendment is a hill she will die on. You guys need to find those people in your state, not just in Michigan, but in all these 50 states. You need to get behind them. Because I'll tell you what, if you don't get behind them, there's going to be a bunch of people swarming them. That's where you're going to have the most change in effect. Let's go back to the United States House of Representatives, though. I suggest you all get behind these few reps that are sitting there saying, nope. We need either more concessions, which a lot of them apparently did get concessions from McCarthy. And I don't know everything that was said behind the scenes, okay? Concessions from McCarthy, trusting him, yeah, that does become kind of an oxymoron. I'm very skeptical, guys. I want to make that very clear. However, I don't know. When Chip Roy came back, Representative Chip Roy of Texas, and Representative Michael Cloud, who I've done videos on this channel, who is one of the toughest fighting Second Amendment supporters in the U.S. Congress, and Michael Cloud has done investigations and written letters to the ATF to expose their BS just as much, if not more, than most people. However, I saw Cloud and Roy came back over and voted for McCarthy. I don't know. Let me know in the chat what you guys think about that. my first inclination, me just being a human, was like, come on, guys, did you just become traitors? Did you just sell out? That was the first thing I thought. But I thought it over a little bit more throughout the day, and I'm like, well, hold on a minute. They were going to McCarthy to try to get all of the concessions from him, to try to change some of the rules of the House enough to where the people would finally start to get a chance of getting represented again. What if McCarthy did, in writing or on paper, something that's binding, do some concessions to kind of get rid of some of the establishment? If he really did do what they asked him to do, well, I mean, if they asked him to do something and he really did it, maybe it's on the up and up. And I'm saying maybe because I don't know. I wasn't there. But you have people like Matt Gaetz, you have people like Lauren Boebert and others that are holding the line. And here's something that I did. Because again, they're only supposed to operate at the consent of the governed. I called my congressman, Congressman Wahlberg out of Michigan. He's a Republican. He's a lot closer to the establishment side of things than certainly Matt Gaetz or Lauren Boebert, obviously. However, he's had a good record on the Second Amendment. He hasn't voted for everything the way I want him to. He's not perfect, but he's been good with the Second Amendment, and certainly I'd rather have him than the alternatives that have run against him in recent elections. However, I called him up and I said, don't vote for McCarthy. He had voted for McCarthy like 10 times at that point. I called his office up and said, no. I said, we need to keep this battle going in the House for the speaker vote as long as possible to bring more power back to the people. And that's what I asked him to do. Now, he's not going to listen to me, but I still put out my thing because, hey, if he's sitting there voting for McCarthy every time and I'm not happy with that and I say nothing, then I'm actually totally fine, right, with it. Somebody just said, Boebert just went for McCarthy. Okay. I did not think she was going to do that. It's hard for me to both watch this and, okay, yep. Yeah, Boebert was right there at the beginning with the bees. Look, guys, the fact that it even has been national news for 4 days now, okay? And the fact that it's going down to the wire like this, it may not be the absolute victory we want. And you don't get victories, though, that where the stuff's been culminating for a couple hundred years. You don't get them overnight. But this still shows right now that there's a little bit of tumult going on in the House of Representatives, and that's how change happens. Sometimes for the better. I hope in this case for the better, obviously. Sometimes, though, to be fair, for the worse. But I called Representative Cloud's office yesterday and said, hold the line. We don't want more business as usual in Washington, D.C. We're tired of this crap. And I said, I'm calling from Michigan just to let you know that you have support from all the way across the country. I left that message to one of his aides, and she was actually very polite and said, well, thank you for your call. I called Matt Gaetz' office. I called Lauren Boebert's office. And I was very forthright. I said, I am not within the district, but I'm just calling from out of state to let you know they have my support. Now, they've since shifted their votes, but I can't sit and complain if my congressman's doing business as usual votes and I don't agree with it, if I don't at least call and express my opinion on it, right? So that's why I did. I don't literally expect like just my phone call to change anything. Okay, Lauren Boebert voted present. Okay. Victoria Spartz, that I'm just taking a quick glance at the live chat, guys. Victoria Spartz from Indiana. I did videos on her. She's had some firecracker speeches in the House about the Second Amendment. She had been voting present. She switched over. But at the end of the day, here's what matters the most. The American people have just, on such large numbers, stood up and actually said this is good that they haven't been able to swear in to the United States House of Representatives, that the American people are sick and tired of business as usual. That people are thinking to themselves, and I know a lot of you are thinking this way, saying, hold on a minute. What's the big deal if we don't have a United States House of Representatives for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days? I don't know. Maybe at this point they could take a few years off because they pass such thick bills so frequently. You know what I'm saying? Do we really need more laws? there's a lot going on right now. And then I just found out, I'm going to go through and talk about this bump stock case in just a minute. If you guys want a more concise video, if you're watching this on replay, or if you're watching it live after we're done with this stream, go watch my standalone YouTube video I made. It's 12 minutes. I had a lot to unpack in that 12 minutes, but really, really good news. The United States Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has shot down the bump stock, the Trump bump stock ban, the rule, right? It's not a machine gun. Now, this was not the GOA case. The GOA, unfortunately, so far has lost their cases, but my friends at the GOA gave me this patch, and it simply says not a machine gun, and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals agrees. Awesome news. And then I find out, check this out. Then I find out that, like, literally in the chat, as I was a few minutes late tonight getting the stream going because I was uploading the breaking news about the bump stock ban. Now, there was other people that put up 3-4 minute videos. That's awesome, but they didn't really say a whole lot about what actually happened. I wanted to get a video out as soon as I could. It took me a couple hours longer than some, but I'm not a news reporter. I'm not trying to be the first. I actually skimmed through much of this 60-page opinion and was able to unpack some of that. So I think that video kind of summed it up. So that explains why I was a little bit late for the stream tonight. Then I find out that my friend Clover Tack, check this out. You can't even make this stuff up. Now, I'm coming after McClune and Kurt if you guys are wrong on this, but my friends Kurt24 and Mike McClune were in the chat. They're like, dude, congrats, you won. I'm like, won what? They're like, Clover's giveaway. I'm like, no way. Now, if you remember last week on this stream, I was giving a huge shout out to my friend Clover Tack and Ghost Tactical. Their channels kind of combined for a giveaway to fund their trip to SHOT Show, which I thought was awesome. Instead of them just taking money as corporate sponsorships to go, they said, no, give us gear. We'll sell these little stickers, which are signed by them. It's a little piece of memorabilia from their channels, and we'll do it that way. And then that way, somebody's going to win, like, I think it was a $1,600 prize, including like a pistol and 50 other things. Well, I couldn't watch their stream tonight. I wanted to. I was going to watch it on replay when they announced the winner. I'm like, oh, I'll see who won so I can congratulate whoever the winner is because I never win anything. Well, actually, I think I have a text message from Clover right here. And I said, is it true? Did I win your giveaway? People in my chat are congratulating me. And he said, yep. Yeah, he's right there in the chat. He said, yep, you won, bro. Dude, that is so crazy. So I've like literally never won anything in my life, guys. And I just won the grand prize. So thank you so much for offering the giveaway. I don't want to necessarily thank you for picking me because I know it was totally random and I'm sure you did it in a way on your channel. So I was picked at random, but thank you for doing that giveaway. And for all of you that were watching the stream last week, I was being sincere. I thought that was an awesome idea, what you guys did. Like, just spot on. And it was a way to incorporate the community instead of you guys just taking sponsorships. And like, yeah, I won. So I'm really excited about that. That's not what you guys came here to listen to me gloat about it. So I'll stop. But I'm just going to say this one more time. I don't think I've ever like won anything ever from like a raffle ticket or the lotto, which I don't play, and I know you can't win if you don't play that, but I never win anything. So I'm kind of stoked. Now it sounds like some of the stuff I'll be able to use for content for the channel. But knowing the way I am, you guys could take a guess. Wait till I get it unpacked and get the haul, and I'll show you as much of it as I can on a live stream here. Probably some of it's going to end up getting given away to some of you guys, if you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying? You guys know how I am. So probably you guys are going to end up, some of you guys, you know, randomly, different people that hang out with me all the time, you guys are probably going to get a little piece of it. It's just how I am. I know you guys aren't too surprised at that, but yep, Clover Tech's in the chat. He said you cannot say never ever again. I guess I actually can't. So yeah. Dang it, I wanted to be negative. Now I'm mad that I won because now I can never say I've never won anything again. I'm ticked off. Lauren Boebert voted present instead of, no. From what I understand, Lauren Boebert's holding the line right now in the House of Representatives. Vote. Kurt said would make a great local stream. Well, thanks, guys. And look, there's a huge stack. What did I win? Dada's asking me. Go over to Clover Tech's channel. Check his channel out. If you like it, subscribe to it. Same thing as the Ghost Tactical channel. Go over there, give it a look. If you like it, subscribe to it. And I mean that, by the way. See, often people just say, go sub to my friend's channel. That means nothing. If you don't like their content, why would you even sub to it? And Clover's going to agree with me on that. Having dead subs means nothing. I like both of their channels. Go to the Clover Tech channel. Go to the Ghost Tactical channel. If you don't like it, whatever. Go watch something else. But if you do, and I think you will, then subscribe. And they're two good channels. On his community post, it shows, I know for sure on Clover Tech's, probably also on the Ghost Tactical channel, it's going to show you all of the stuff. It's like this huge haul. I think it's like 50 things or something like that. Like dozens of things. So, yeah. All right. I saw something about the Michigan State Capitol. I'm going to catch up with Super Chats in just a moment here. I am going to be at the Michigan State Capitol hanging out with, guys, I'm so excited. Like, look, you guys know this. It's boring stuff. Nobody cares about it, whatever. But I've done videos about the primary elections. I've done videos showing me on site at the 2A Patriot events. My friends Rob, Rick, so many others that gave me that big sign in the back. I actually go to these events and scout these people out in the very, very early parts of their elections. I was excited to find out about a lady named Jamie Thompson, who I had never heard of. And then the primaries came and she was on the ballot. Then she won the primary. Then she won the general election. Now she's my state representative. I'm honored that I'm going to be hanging out with her all day at the opening of the new session in Michigan. That's when they all do their official swearing in. It's the first session of the House. The Capitol building's open to the public. The gallery's going to be open. And I am going to get you guys whatever footage that I can from there. And I hope all of you guys are doing that on your state level, on your local level, because it does matter, definitely. 100%. You guys want to know what I won? It's huge. Just go over to Clover Tech's channel and look at the community post. You have to scroll through like 6 pictures of all of it and stuff. But I don't want to sit here and keep gloating about that. Let me read a couple of these super chats that popped in. If you could help me start those over from the beginning, Linda. And then I want to actually talk about some of this Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals case. Like, this is crazy cool. Like, whoa. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally. Like, there's some stuff in here where you guys are like, wow. Like, a Circuit Court of Appeals judges actually get it? I'm trying to be in a good mood tonight, guys. There's actually some things that are coming down right now that are pretty good. Cruz with the super chat and a channel member. What's happening, man? He's been a long-time viewer of the channel. Says, hi, my friend. Happy to be back. 2A all the way. Well, I'm happy for you to be back. And yeah, dude, obviously 2A all the way because we like the whole Bill of Rights. But the Second Amendment just a little more. Because why? Well, obviously, I believe it was put there not for if, but for when they come for all the rest. They're trying to come for all the rest. But I don't know. We'll see what happens here. Take those black pills and spit them out, guys. We still have a little bit of a hope. We've still got a couple dogs in this fight. Thank you, Cruz. Mateo with the super chat, reminding you guys to give me a thumbs up. That's kind of a no-brainer, but I know you probably forgot. So for those of you that forgot, hit the thumbs up. It helps the algorithm. And for no other reason, Susan Wiki. I'd like to also give a quick shout out to all the YouTube employees who watch the live streams. I hope you guys are enjoying the stream tonight. I know you guys are excited. Susan's excited about the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals decision. She's excited that people are kind of being a little bit testy with what was presumed to be Speaker McCarthy. So, Mateo, thank you, man. I appreciate it, dude. Here's what I was trying to say, guys. If you like the stream, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the stream, look at it like two sides of the coin. Like, well, 2A EDU. Look, I know none of you would say this. I'm probably, quite frankly, a lot of your favorite channels. I wouldn't blame you if I was. However, if you're like, not so much, but he's a little less worse than Susan. Here's the kicker. Even if you don't like the stream, giving me a thumbs up is like giving her a thumbs down. So it's still a victory. You know what I'm saying? Snow Pro with the $5 super chat. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. He says, I actually work for the state in IT. Well, in a past life, I used to do IT full-time. Congratulations, and I feel sorry for you, and I think you know what I mean. IT work can be a good job. You don't have to go out in the middle of blizzards like I do. You don't have to get caught in thunderstorms on your lawnmower and 95 degrees as much. But then it kind of gets like really tedious and technical, and it sucks in its own right. I get all sides of it. Trust me, man. He says, right across from the Capitol. I'm in on the 11th. Are you just having a meeting, or is it some kind of rally? Well, it's the opening day, if you will, the first session to usher in the new House and Senate in the state of Michigan. So there you go. It's the official opening, if you will. It's when they're starting their session up, and yeah. So it's basically kind of an all-day thing, really. The gallery's going to be open for what I've been told, so you can observe if you want to see them getting sworn in and the session, and just walk around the building. Not an official rally that I know about. Marco Polo with a super chat. Thanks, man, and for being a channel member. I appreciate it, dude. He said, stay strong. You got my vote on the Gundies. Well, I guess while we're talking about voting, apparently I was nominated for a gun award. It's called the Gundies. You guys can go there, sign up for a free account. There's 15 categories. You get 15 votes a day. And I am in the 2A category. I should know to give myself a proper shout out. I should have been more prepared. It's the category that says 2A in it. Let's put it that way. I can't remember exactly what it's called. I was nominated for that. And like I said in a post, vote early and vote often. Hold on a minute. Vote often. You guys are thinking, hold on a minute. That's what a lot of Democrats do. By the way, speaking of which, let's go, Brandon. The most fortified and the most popular of all time. Now, when I say the most fortified, that is actually from Time Magazine, Susan, pay attention, which is a NewsGuard certified source. So, we're talking this way, you guys can fortify me possibly. I probably won't, but we can fortify it to make me win by voting literally every day. But here's the kicker. That's actually nothing wrong with that. The terms and rules of the Gandhis is you can vote in a category every single day. So you can totally legitimately vote for me every day. And yeah, check out my community post if you guys want more information on that. Thank you, Marco. I appreciate it, man. What am I most excited about now? What's going on over there? I was going to show the C-SPAN thing and like kind of play it while I'm streaming. I don't know. I'm having mixed thoughts on that. Like I was going to do that no matter what, if this Fifth Circuit Court thing didn't come down. I don't know. Are you guys like on the edge of your seats and you're like not able to watch my stream because instead you're wanting to only listen to C-SPAN right now? Or are you guys like, look, this is more of a 2A firearms channel. This House Speaker affects everything, though, including the Second Amendment. And I would have sat and done commentary on it, but at the same time, this isn't the Tim Pool channel. He's been doing it like 8 hours a day. But this just came down like tonight. And I don't know if I'm like the only nerd here, but like this stuff really, really matters. And this actually kind of has me going. So let me know real quick. I'll just take a glance at the chat and see where the temperature of the room is on that. I mean, I could literally just play C-SPAN and have it up here and kind of talk about it and opine on it, but I don't know. I'm actually kind of voting I don't do that unless like every one of you is like, that's the only thing we want to watch right now is C-SPAN. And if that's the case, I get it. Fun to learn with a super chat and a channel member. Thanks a lot, man. He said, thanks for the swag. However, $1 trillion bill didn't fill my grocery cart. I know I gave out some $1 trillion bills and I'm going to give away some more soon just to remind you guys that it's like, look, those fortunately, now you might want to say unfortunately it's not real, right? Fun to learn, but fortunately those are not real bills. But they could be. They won't be until maybe they are. I mean, we just passed a 1.7 totally unpaid for stimulus. What's it called? The Economic Inflation Recovery Act, whatever. Look, they named it was the omnibus bill. Let's just call it that. I can't even remember what it's called. You never even think you'd have a bill this big. But when you keep passing these trillions of dollar bills that are unpaid for, I mean, look at this. This is real currency. And this is sad. Lori said she came to watch me. Okay, cool. Thank you, Lori. $10 billion. And this is from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. Now, this is totally collapsed now. But not that long ago, like this bill was printed in 2008, okay? I mean, I can remember 2008. There was a ammo panic buy because that was the first time Obama was elected. This was a real bill. And they were printing $10 billion bills. Why? Because it would have taken $1 trillion to fill up a grocery cart. And whereas you could buy a loaf of bread for $1 at one time, it got to the point where $100 wouldn't buy a loaf of bread. Then $1,000 wouldn't buy a loaf of bread. Now, we haven't gotten this bad yet, and that's why this speaker vote's important, and that's why all of this is important. We haven't gotten there yet, but there was a time where Zimbabwe and the former Yugoslavia and Germany 100 years ago and so many others, Venezuela in very recent times, they hadn't gotten to that point yet either. Where $100 wouldn't buy a loaf of bread, then $1,000 wouldn't, then $10,000 wouldn't, then $100,000 still wouldn't buy a loaf of bread, then $1 million wouldn't, then 10 million, 100 million, then $1 billion wouldn't even buy a loaf of bread. And then at a certain point, you'd use this $10 bill for toilet paper, quite frankly, because you couldn't even afford to buy a sheet of toilet paper for $10 billion at a certain point in Zimbabwe. So I bought a packet of these $1 trillion bills for people to think about a lot of things. Now, I bought those before the speaker vote has been held up, has been extended, is being delayed, blocked, whatever you want to call it. But I knew they were a reflection of the times we're in for sure. And our friend Fun to Learn jokes and says, couldn't even fill up my grocery cart for $1 trillion. Well, we hope that stays a joke, because I remember when I used to be able to get a heaping cartload of good food for $100. Then it was $200. Now it's $200 and it barely covers up 6 inches. I mean, unless you're only eating ramen noodles and rice, and while some people got to do what they got to do, you're not going to really sustain yourself on that. Not have good nutrition or health, certainly. So, yeah. I've said a bunch of stuff out in the last week. We did a New Year's stream and Christmas stream, and I gave a bunch of stuff away, and I'll get back to, I've got some other cool stuff to give away soon, but hopefully some of you guys have got some of that stuff. I spent a lot of time packaging it up. So what do you guys think? What's going on here with this thing? I don't want to just sit. I don't think I'm going to sit and just stream C-SPAN, but I do want to know where we're at right now. Okay, it looks like McCarthy 118, Jeffries 108, others 3, present 1. Okay, 4's right now. We're at the cusp, right? Because it only takes one more, a 5th vote to make it where we have to have a 15th vote for speaker. I think we're only 1 away. I have it over here in another tab, but it's on mute. I don't know where we're at right now on the rolls. So you guys can chat about that in the chat. I'll try to look out of the corner of my eye and see where we're at here. McCarthy's at 150. Okay, I'm a little bit behind. But the key is right now there's 4 people saying no to McCarthy. I think they just need a 5th vote. Look, guys, I want the Republicans to get their chairs, their committee chairs. I want them to run the ATF through the ringer. I want to watch Jim Jordan just grilling them. Don't mistake what I'm saying here. If I only have 2 choices, which ultimately that's what it's going to come down to, yes, I want the Republicans to have the committee chairs, run the investigations, okay? Have the control over the flow of legislation through the Congress. Yes, instead of Jeffries and the Democrats. But I want better than that. And even if McCarthy does end up getting elected, it still shows that there's a lot of Americans that are like, you know what? We're still willing to take less worse, but barely. And the election's coming up again here in a couple years. And once they start realizing, no, the American people are not going to just keep on having to plug their nose and barely, I guess I'll vote Republican because it's a little less worse. That's what we're all frustrated with right now. So I thought I should make that point clear. And unfortunately, there's people that are going to watch the first 15 minutes of this stream, not watch any further. They're going to come in the comments and say, but 2A EDU, you're happy that they haven't elected McCarthy? That must mean that you want Jeffries to be the Speaker of the House. And it's like, oh, great. Nice try gaslighting me, but you don't know me very well. So hopefully you guys already knew me better than that. Of course, I don't want Jeffries to be the Speaker of the House, but I don't want it to just be a shoo-in for the establishment person either. And I put out a poll. I'm going to talk about this Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals case in just a minute here. But I find something interesting, and I want to ask you guys about this. And I will reread this chat later, although I can't read all of your chats in real time because I like this to be a congruent, show for all of you watching live. And I'm happy you guys are here. And also all of you who are watching this on replay. A lot of you look at this as a podcast. So shout out to all my replay audience who might be out on a date night with your lovely wife tonight, which I'd rather go out, and do that if I were you too. So welcome all of you who are watching this on replay. So I can't read every chat live, and that's why I don't try to, because although I'd love to say hi to all of you in real time, it makes it hard to listen to for people the next day, right? So I put up a poll on my channel. And this is interesting. I'm going to say this because I kind of understand why. And I kind of don't understand why. And this is not me condemning people for this or praising them. It's actually neither. I want you guys to have a little discussion in the chat so I can see where you guys are at with this. And this comes with my community poll I put up. Now, keep in mind, before you guys voted in the poll and left your comments, you might not have known, I didn't know, that Trump's bump stock ban was going to get overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, because I'm calling Trump out on this doesn't mean that I was an Obama fan, although I was an Obama fan on bump stocks more than Trump on that one issue because Obama's ATF said they were fined 37 million times. So on this one issue, I'm more of an Obama fan, but come on. Not an Obama fan, clearly. Clearly not a Let's Go Brandon fan, the former vice president. But I call Trump out on this because he did. He did. He was also the first major political player to call for the red flag laws on a national level. Now, with that said, people that voted in this poll, for the most part, couldn't have possibly known this bump stock case was going to kind of remind us again of what President Trump, who I did vote for, okay? Here's the problem. I call out what Trump factually did and say I'm not happy with it. People get mad at me. I say, well, I did vote for Trump. People get mad at me. We're not here to be mad at each other. I'm just telling you guys the truth. I said, here's what I said in the post. I just called my congressman at Rep. Wahlberg and asked him to vote for Donald's. Now, I do like Donald's. Voting for Donald's meant two things to me, though. I liked the gridlock. I liked them realizing, hey, we don't want just status quo. We don't want the other side of the same coin. We're tired of it. This is a mandate from the American people, and some of the reps actually understanding this, that they better offer major concessions, okay? And if I'm not in these backdoor meetings, I don't know. So if, and hopefully, McCarthy did make those concessions that are bona fide, they're in writing, they're legit, then that's actually a huge victory, even if he gets elected, if he made those concessions. We're going to have to put in faith people like Representative Cloud, Michael Cloud of Texas, Chip Roy of Texas. We're going to have to put in good faith right now, and hopefully they have the American people's best interests at heart. And hopefully that means that since they switched over to McCarthy, that McCarthy really, really did make those concessions, okay? We need to be fair with that. If he really did make the concessions, well, then they did their job and they got him to make the concessions. If he really didn't, then go Boebert, go Matt Gaetz. Let's keep this thing locked up. And if nothing else fails, hey, it's another day they can't pass another law to deprive us of our natural rights or to overburden us with more debt, more taxes. So I put this poll up. I said I want to vote for Donald's. Now, I didn't just say that randomly. I think Representative Donald's of Florida is actually one of the best congressmen that we have. Now, a lot of Republicans I put in the least worst category, and I'm sure this dude's not perfect. I mean, nobody's perfect. Look at the Federalist Papers. If men were angels, it basically says we would need no government at all. And that's true. But since men are not angels, we need a government to protect us from ourselves so that petty tyrants can't rule over and deprive all of the other citizens of their natural God-given rights. And that's why I believe we do need some form of government. Because if there was no government at all, we could look at governments like that, where there might be 100 different people that are all claiming to have power, and there's roving warlords and people just driving by door to door with crew-served machine guns pointed at the front of the house to collect taxes and things like that. Look at places like Cambodia. Look at places that had like chaos in government after we came in and did regime changes and wars. And there's a lot to this. And that's not the topic of the stream tonight. So we do need a government. But it says if government were angels, we would need no checks on the government. But since the government is certainly not angels, we need to have both internal checks. And that's what's going on right now with this vote, mind you, with McCarthy. This is an internal check of power within the House. That's what's going on right now. This was talked about before the United States of America was a country. But we also need external checks. And that's the most important one, and that's me, and that's you, and that's we the people of these United States of America. So I'm not saying Donald is perfect, but I've been watching him pretty closely. In his previous term, and he was also in the Florida legislature, I think he's pretty darn good. He seems pretty even-keeled, a businessman that came up from nothing, became a success. And I do think Donald's is a good one. That's why I encourage my representative to vote for Donald's. But I also liked the gridlock because I don't want business as usual. I wanted major concessions to have to be made. I'm a realist. I knew eventually the United States House was going to go back into session, but the longer the gridlock, the better. That showed more of a mandate from the American people. So I said, and asked him to vote for Donald, Speaker of the House. Who is your choice? McCarthy got 5%. Donald's got 20%. This is my poll of 642 votes. Not a very popular poll, but still 642 votes. When they do these polls that you see like on TV, a lot of times they only poll a few hundred people. So my poll probably holds almost as many people in it as polls you'll see on the news. So we can't just dismiss this. And I'm going to get to the point of what I got to a second ago, where I'm not sure about this one. And I want to know where you guys are at with this, because my mind goes back and forth on this topic a lot. And I try to understand both sides of it. Not meaning I'm being wishy-washy. I'm just trying to understand both sides of this. So Donald's 20%, Jeffrey's 3%. So almost as many people that watch my channel like the Democrat as much as the establishment Republican. Very interesting. Here's the part I want you guys to help me understand. Trump, 57%. And I put him on there because he was nominated. And then I just put other, which some of you guys said in the comments, dude, other, like we'd rather vote for like a homeless person, like anybody, but any of these people in Washington. I understood that. I just put other because I didn't want like 300 fields. 57% of my viewers want Trump to be Speaker of the House. It's interesting. I'll just say that at the very least. Trump banned bump stocks. Trump called for red flag laws. Trump banned the Molot company, the Vapor, one of the awesomest rifles and shotguns. These are Kalash variants from Russia, from an actual military factory. He banned those. He said, take them quick. Take the guns first, then you can go to court. And then he looked over at the United States Department of Justice and the AFT. And Donald Trump said, get them gone. Get rid of bump stocks right now. If you remember when this was going on, I was reporting on it heavily at that time. I said, but he can't do that. And then the Department of Justice came back at Trump. The swamp. Listen to this. The swamp itself. The bureaucracy came back to Trump and said, we actually can't ban it. Obama said we couldn't ban it millions of times. Not literally, but it was like a dozen times. Obama said we can't ban them. And Trump said, I don't care. Just ban them anyways. And I'm seeing some thoughtful conversation. I am right here. I'm seeing it. This is not me trying to convince you to like Trump, not like Trump. I don't even know if he's really running or not. He says he is, but I'm actually not convinced. If he's really running, he needs to stop whining. I'm just going to say this 10 seconds about Trump, and I'm going to move on. And I voted for him twice. Was I going to vote for Hillary? Was I going to vote for the former vice president? The current former vice president? I don't think so. And a no vote is like half a vote to Hillary or the current former vice president. Now look, one of the most anti-gun presidents we've ever had, no matter how much you liked his other policies, the bump stock case is germane again right now. 50%, 57% of my viewers wanted to be Speaker of the House. I don't know if he's running for office for real or not. If he is, in my opinion, he needs to stop whining and move on, because we need solutions to move forward with. It's fine to complain about injustices in the past. Let's get them exposed. That's been done now for over 2 years. Stop whining. Put forth a path to what is going to make America great again, again, or whatever it's going to be. And stop telling us how great it is that you invented and you fast-tracked. Stop bragging about Operation Warp Speed. Stop bragging about that thing where people drop suddenly and all these things. Stop shoving that down my throat. I'm going to get off my little Trump soapbox. I don't know if he's really running or not. Like, he literally, legally is running. I don't know if he really is. But I'm seeing you guys giving me reasons why. More of you want Trump. And I get both sides of it. I really do. I get it. Because there were a lot of things that he did that were awesome as far as policies go. He's a businessman, a successful businessman. So I get it. I get all of the reasons why you like Trump. I really, really do. Because there's many things that I like about him. Okay? Gates just voted president. I believe, thank you, Ross. I believe that means we have to go to another vote, right? Yeah, just let me know. Why was Trump the most popular for Speaker of the House? Now, I believe in America, and this one here happens to come from the South, from the 5th Circuit out of the state of Louisiana. Now, I've talked about this before when I went through these long list of senators that voted for the omnibus bill that was packed with 12 insane pieces of gun control. And the South voted for this gun control a good bit too. Okay, a good bit. And shout out to all the people in the South, by the way. I'm going to be down in South Carolina here in just a couple months, but this happened in the deep South of the United States in the 5th District, originating out of the U.S. District Court, the Western District of Texas. So a guy named Michael Cargill said, bump stock's not a machine gun, and it's a violation of my natural rights. The district court disagreed, so it was appealed to the circuit court, who heard it on a smaller panel. And the panel disagreed with Cargill too and said, no, actually it is a machine gun. The Trump bump stock ban's completely on the up and up. Okay. Somebody said 2-8 EDU for speaker. I don't want it. I don't want it. I didn't even purposely run for the Gundy Awards, but a lot of you guys are excited I was nominated. That's why I brought it up tonight. But I don't run for anything. But thank you, though. I do take that as a compliment. Yeah, just let me know in the chat if you guys can explain to me why Trump would be the best speaker. I've never said once that he wouldn't be tonight, actually. I just called a spade with him a couple times. But it is weird, though. This comes out right after most people have voted. I have to say that for sure. McCarthy's haggling with Gates on the floor. So it looks you guys are definitely, look, I say he's a successful businessman. Somebody says I'm not. Or he's not. I don't know. I don't know. It seemed like he did a lot of things for the United States that were good as far as some economic policy, but he did put us in debt a lot. Look, none of these guys have been good. I haven't seen a good president in the United States for... George Washington was a good one, okay? I'll start from there. Maybe there's been a good one since. I'm not sure. I'll just leave it at that. All right, so Cargill took this up, and they actually appealed to what's called an en banc hearing. That means, I don't know why they like to use so much Latin in the legal space, but they do. Well, I do know why, but they do. So this happened to be, I think there's like maybe 18 judges total, 17 judges in the full circuit, the Fifth Circuit, and like 9 senior judges. Well, this particular panel that was able to preside over this case was 16, and it won 13-3, actually in favor of the original plaintiff, which is Michael Cargill out of Texas. So this, in my opinion, not legal advice. Someone's going to ask me, people have been asking me, does that mean that if I live in Texas or Mississippi or Louisiana, I can go find a bump stock somewhere, wherever, because you're supposed to have already destroyed them or turned them in or whatever, right? Can I just suddenly use it? And I'm not giving you legal advice on that. I will say that a circuit court, when it's the full en banc, usually is precedent setting. I don't know how long it would take for it to go into effect. So while I'm not telling you to go put something on your gun right now, look, but this is huge nonetheless. And I will tell you this, no matter what, this does not set any kind of case law or, court precedent, as they call it, in any of the other circuits. But this is big because other circuits sided with the ATF and this circuit sided with Cargill. So it starts off, since the National Firearms Act of 1934, federal law has heavily regulated machine guns. Indeed, as proposed, the law was known to many as the Anti-Machine Gun Bill. The possession or transfer of a machine gun was eventually banned through the Gun Control Act of 1968 and the Firearms Owners Protection Act of 1986. So hold on a minute. We've got Franklin Roosevelt for the NFA. A lot of people, even a lot of conservatives, say the greatest president of all time. He's on my list of the top 5 worst. I mean, if you're a communist, he's one of the greatest of all time. Okay, then it goes to Lyndon B. Johnson for the Gun Control Act of 1968. Lots of stuff there, too, especially with the recent resurgence of the Kennedy talks, right? JFK. There's a lot there. I'm not going to get into that. There's a lot there. And I know some of you are kind of grinning and going, yeah, okay. 1986, that was under Reagan. So 2 Democrats and a Republican pretty much nixed all the machine guns is what they're recognizing here. Today, possession of a machine gun is a federal crime carrying a penalty of up to 10 years incarceration. This appeal concerns a regulation promulgated by the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. There we go. All the dogs just started getting. Make sure your dog's in good order. We just said the ATF. Well, the Fifth Circuit just said that. They said the ATF. Give your dog a treat. Tell them you got their back. All right. Purporting to interpret the federal prohibition on machine guns as extending to bump stocks. A bump stock is a firearm attachment which allows a shooter to harness the natural recoil of a semi-automatic weapon to quickly re-engage the trigger after firing, enabling him to shoot at an increased rate of speed. When ATF first considered the type of bump stocks at issue here, it understood that they were not machine guns. That's what I was saying earlier. Obama's ATF understood they weren't machine guns. Go figure. What's up, C&T Designs? I saw you in there a second ago. ATF maintained this position for over a decade, issuing many interpretation letters to that effect to members of the public. This is like all the stuff I've been talking about on this channel for 2 years in this ruling. But ATF reversed its long-standing position in 2018, subjecting anyone who possessed a bump stock to criminal liability. ATF reversed its position to a great extent in response to the tragic events that occurred in Las Vegas on October 1st, 2017. On that day, a deranged gunman murdered dozens of innocent men and women and injured hundreds more. To carry out this appalling crime, the gunman used many weapons and utilized many accessories, including bump stocks. I would say allegedly. I haven't seen them prove he used bump stocks, but whatever. They're going to talk about that later, that doesn't really matter. Public pressure to ban bump stocks was tremendous. Multiple bills to that effect were introduced in both houses of Congress. But before that could be considered an earnest, the ATF published the regulation at issue here, short-circuiting the legislative process. And that's where Trump literally called for it on national TV and said, do it and do it now. Appellant Michael Cargill surrendered several bump stocks to the government following publication of the regulation at issue. He now challenges the legality of that regulation, arguing that a bump stock does not fall within the definition of machine gun as set forth in federal law, and thus the ATF lacked the authority to issue a regulation purporting to define the term as such. This is just normal reading. Do you guys read this stuff? It's actually quite conversational. I'm loving this. Cargill is correct. A plain reading of the statutory language paired with the close consideration of the mechanics of semi-automatic firearm reveals that a bump stock is excluded from the technical definition of machine gun set forth in the Gun Control Act and National Firearms Act. But even if that conclusion were incorrect, the rule of lenity would still require us to interpret the statute against imposing criminal liability. When they talk about the rule of lenity, it means if it could go either way, and I'm summarizing this, go research it if you're interested. If it could kind of go either way, and it's like, well, what's the law mean versus what would someone think it means? It's supposed to go to the citizen, not to the government. The citizen's supposed to win if it's kind of in the balance. That's what that means in simple terms. A rich tradition supports the, quote, well-known rule that penal laws are to be construed strictly. United States v. Wolfberger, and it's a Supreme Court case, as Chief Justice Marshall explained long ago, the rule, quote, is founded on the tenderness of the law for the rights of individuals and on that plain principle that the power of punishment is vested in the legislative, not in the judicial department. It is the legislature, not the court, which is to define a crime and ordain its punishment. This government regulation violates these principles. As an initial matter, it purports to allow ATF, rather than Congress, to set forth the scope of criminal prohibitions. I've gotten 20,000 comments in the last couple of years saying, but Congress makes law. How can the ATF make law? These rules are not. This is what they're talking about here. And this is awesome that a very, very high court, tied for one of the second highest courts in the country, actually gets this. Indeed, the government would outlaw bump stocks by administrative fiat, even though the very same agency routinely interpreted the bans on machine guns as not applying to the type of bump stocks at issue here. Nor can we say that the statutory definition unambiguously supports the government's interpretation. As noted above, we conclude that it unambiguously does not. But even if we are wrong, the statute is at least ambiguous in this regard. And if the statute is ambiguous, Congress must cure that ambiguity, not the federal courts. This is really powerful stuff. I hope everyone watching doesn't just like to complain about everything. This is actually good. The definition of machine gun as set forth in the National Firearms Act and Gun Control Act does not apply to bump stocks. And if there were any doubt as to this conclusion, we conclude that the statutory definition is ambiguous at the very least. The rule of lenity, therefore, compels us to construe the statute in Cargill's favor. Either way, we must reverse. It goes on to talk about the Gun Control Act of 1968 provides that it shall be unlawful for any person to transfer or possess a machine gun. The act defines machine gun as follows. The key here is it talks about a single function of the trigger. These are very, very plain words. The single function of a trigger. The traditional example of a machine gun is a rifle capable of automatic fire like the M16. Semi-automatic rifles like the AR-15 are not machine guns. See, it's little things like there. The court of public opinion is that it stands for assault rifle, automatic rifle 15. No, it's the Armalite rifle 15, and they're acknowledging right here the M16 is a machine gun, the AR-15 is not. I don't know if this is sunk in yet, guys. This can only be reversed by the United States Supreme Court. This is the en banc hearing. This is the full panel. So for people that are still wanting to be naysayers saying, but it'll get overturned by the Clarence Thomas Bruin decision Supreme Court, if this gets up to them while those guys are on the Supreme Court, I don't know. I can't say for sure, but I don't think so. I don't think I see the Supreme Court that passed Bruin overturning this. So it goes on to say the M16 is capable of automatic fire. That is to say, firing more than one round per trigger action. The AR-15 is essentially a semi-automatic version of the M16. That is to say, it fires only one round per trigger action. To understand what a machine gun is, it is helpful to understand what a machine gun is not. I like this. To that end, the firing mechanism of a semi-automatic weapon is especially important. The relevant parts are as follows. It shows the hammer, the sear, the disconnector, and the trigger. Okay. The trigger is the interface between the gun's internal mechanism and the human finger. The sear is the trigger's top forward geometric plane, which locks snugly into a groove near the spring of the hammer. The hammer is the spring-loaded element that strikes the firing pin, causing ignition of the charge and propulsion of the bullet. The disconnector is a part that sits on the top of the trigger and serves to reset the hammer after a round is fired. This resetting is what makes a semi-automatic weapon semi-automatic. Very, very important to think about. The mechanics of the firing process are as follows. First, the user pulls the trigger. Doing so disengages the hammer from the sear, allowing the spring to swing the hammer to strike the firing pin, which causes the charge to combust and propel the bullet. The firing of the bullet thrusts the bullet backwards, which kicks the hammer into the disconnector on top of the still depressed trigger. When the trigger is reset, the hammer is pulled back into the cocked position and secured by the trigger sear as it slips off the disconnector. The user may then fire again by pulling the trigger without having to manually recock the hammer. The mechanics are viewed below. These guys actually took the time to go through the nitty-gritty, how these actually work. Instead of everyone just declaring, saying, it's a machine gun, it's a machine gun. Trump declared it's a machine gun. They all wanted to declare they were machine guns. Not the Fifth Circuit. The end result is that the user of a semi-automatic firearm can fire rapidly by means of repeated use of the trigger. Critically, use of the trigger necessarily corresponds to 1-to-1 with bullets fired. This is, a single pull of the trigger results in a single bullet fire without resetting the trigger, and the disconnector cannot reset the hammer to the fully cocked position. And unless the hammer is fully cocked, it will not be able to strike the firing pin with sufficient force to discharge the weapon a second time. And then they even talk about hammer follow, which we've all talked about. When a weapon fails to fire for this reason, it is said to experience a hammer follow malfunction. In sum, both the hammer and the trigger disconnector must be variably returned full circle before another round can be dispatched. This process may be contrasted with a fully automatic gun, which is equipped with something called an auto sear, a device that serves to recock and release the hammer in tandem with the motion of the bolt for so long as the trigger remains depressed. In other words, the auto sear enables a pendulum swing of the hammer in sync with the bolt without any further input from the user. With one pull of the trigger, an automatic weapon can shoot continuously until ammunition is depleted. They literally laid out exactly how that works, like technically, physically, scientifically. It's crazy. It goes on to say the statutory definition of a machine gun also includes devices that convert an ordinary firearm into a machine gun. A switch that's flipped. It goes on to talk about some of these other things, but it says a bump stock is an accessory that attaches to a semi-automatic weapon and assists the shooter to engage in bump firing. Bump firing, in turn, is a technique whereby a shooter uses a firearm's natural recoil to quickly re-engage the trigger, resulting in an increased rate of fire. It is possible to bump fire an ordinary semi-automatic rifle without any assisting devices, but a bump stock makes the technique easier. They talk about how a bump stock works. It's a sliding piece that, utilizes your shoulder and the recoil. And it just talks about the fact that just because you're able to shoot in a semi-automatic fashion faster and faster still does not change that whether it's a machine gun or not. Okay. It goes on to talk about a little bit of the history here. Bump stocks were first invented in the early 2000s. Historically, ATF distinguished between mechanical and non-mechanical bump stocks in categorizing a particular accessory as a machine gun. So some of them used to have like a spring mechanism and whatnot, and they said that was a machine gun because it was a mechanism, right? But that the bump stocks that were banned in this case were non-mechanical, meaning they did not change the definition of the firearm. But it said So it said, but from the time the ATF first considered non-mechanical bump stocks to 2017, so we're going back to like 2006, all the way till 2017, it categorized that type of bump stock as not being a machine gun. In that time, the Firearms Technology Branch issued dozens of classification letters regarding non-mechanical bump stocks, each arriving at the same conclusion. One letter from 2010 is illustrative. And it literally shows one of those letters from 2010. Who was the president in 2010? And they said, no, it's not a machine gun. However, bump stock classification reached a point of inflection on October 1st, 2017. On that day, a gunman murdered over 50 innocent men and women in Las Vegas and injured 500 more. He used several weapons, many of which were equipped with extended magazines and bump stocks. These tragic events thrust bump stocks into the center of national attention. Within 10 days of the shooting, 2 bills prohibiting bump stocks were proposed to Congress. And they list the bills there. While Congress debated the bills, so they never passed the bills while they were debating them, the ATF published a notice of proposed rulemaking intending to reverse its previous interpretation that non-mechanical bump stocks are not machine guns for purposes of the NFA and the GCA. So don't give Congress time to pass or not pass laws, just summarily change the definition. They note here, even Senator Dianne Feinstein, and I've talked about her before, she sponsored one of the bills mentioned above, expressed concern with the proposed rule. So they're actually using what Feinstein said about the rule against the rule. Pretty smart people on this Fifth Circuit, I would note. Now, let me catch up real quick here. I'm reading the chat. Some of you guys said they had to adjourn, so let me know real quick. I really think this is really, really important, but I know you guys are also simultaneously really in on the speaker election. There's so much breaking news going on right now. There's only one of me, and I was already half hour late to the stream, so let me know. Did McCarthy fail to win yet again? And are they now adjourned for the night? Let me know those 2 questions if you guys can help me. Is there a Speaker of the House yet? And when are we going to get another vote? If you guys can help me with that real quick, because I can see some of you are clearly, okay, still voting to adjourn or not. So McCarthy did not win, I assume. Okay. This is interesting. Dianne Feinstein wrote this at the time because she was saying, look, we need a law. This ATF bump stock ban isn't going to be enough. This is where politics gets so messed up, and a lot of people are happy right now with the gridlock. McCarthy lost again. Okay. He's down 1 vote. All right. This is where a lot of people are kind of happy with this gridlock with McCarthy in Congress because we see 2 sides of the same coin. We saw a very rare instance, and this is really messed up, guys, and I think we're all smart enough not to conflate things. And if you're not smart enough, sorry, sucks to be you, but I'm chewing gum and walking at the same time. Whereas I'm not saying that Obama was a better president than Trump. I'm not saying that, obviously. Obama said bump stocks were fine. Trump said ban them. This is what happens sometimes, and it's frustrating. Whereas Trump said get them gone, the ATF has the full authority to ban bump stocks. And I generally like him a lot better than Dianne Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein was actually on our side with this. He said, no, you can't ban them through the ATF. We need to make a law. Not that she was truly on our side, but in this very narrow window, Feinstein actually had our back on this and stuff. That's how messed up politics gets on the federal level. Feinstein wrote this. Until today, the ATF has consistently stated that bump stocks could not be banned through the regulation because they do not fall under the legal definition of a machine gun. Now the department has done an about-face, claiming that bump stocks do fall under the legal definition of a machine gun and it could ban them through regulations. The fact that the ATF as recently as April 2017 said that it lacks this authority gives the gun lobby and its allies even more reason to file a lawsuit to block the regulations. It's not that she likes us. She was just trying to say, like, dude, this is going to get shut down. We need to make a law to make sure we can ban them. Okay. Unbelievably, the regulation hinges on a dubious analysis claiming that bumping the trigger is not the same as pulling it. The gun lobby and manufacturers have a field day with this reasoning. What's more, the regulation does not ban all devices that accelerate a semi-automatic weapon rate of fire. Both Justice Department and ATF lawyers know that legislation is the only way to ban bump stocks. The law has not changed since 1986, and it must be amended to cover bump stocks and other dangerous devices like trigger cranks. Our bill does this. The regulation does not. So she wants to ban bump stocks plus more is what she's saying. However, she lists all the reasons, and she's right in this part of her thing. Not that she's right to want to ban everything, obviously, but she comes in and says, look, this is the exact reason why this regulation won't last. Like, you can't do this. You yourselves have said they're not machine guns too many times. It's messed up, isn't it? When the one that you hate the most actually agrees with you against the one that you like the most. Yeah, it's like, this stuff doesn't make a lot of sense. But focus on your local stuff, your school board, your township, your county, your city, your state. That's where we can still make a lot more real change. And then eventually we'll get that culture wave to keep moving up to the federal level. But there's a lot of improvement that clearly needs done on the federal level. Because I'm like, look here, I have to agree with the factual part. Not the last sentence where she's like, so we need a law to ban everything. Obviously not. But she's actually right here when she's arguing against Trump when he gave that order to the ATF. Okay, I'm going to skip a little bit here. Plaintiff Michael Cargill lawfully acquired 2 non-mechanical bump stocks, but surrendered them to ATF after passage of the final rule. He then sued ATF and other federal defendants, bringing several claims under the Administrative Procedure Act. First, he contends that the ATF lacked authority to promulgate the final rule because its interpretation of machine gun conflicts with the unambiguous statutory definition. And even if the statute is ambiguous, Cargill says it should be construed in his favor because of the rule of lenity. And because the statute concerns criminal penalties, here's where we're going to hear about Chevron deference. The government's interpretation is not entitled to deference under Chevron USA Inc. versus Natural Resources Defense Council. Cargill also argues that the final rule constitutes an unconstitutional exercise of legislative power by an administrative agency. Okay. Now they talk about the lower court cases that actually disagree with Cargill. And then they're talking about other divided opinions. It says, 3 of our sister circuits have reviewed preliminary injunction motions related to the final rule. And this is where this could become ripe for the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court may actually, take this up. Because now is where they're talking about there's a split between these different circuits. And often, not always, often that is what's required for the Supreme Court to take it up. Will the Supreme Court agree with the Fifth Circuit? I don't know. Are they very likely to? I think so. But at the very least, this is very, very important. And I hope nobody's just getting bored being like, I don't care about the Fifth Circuit, because there's this tendency in America that not in my backyard, I don't care. Look, this stuff matters because we now have one of the highest courts in the land that actually get it. Knowing that there's somebody out there, or in this case, a group of 13 people that are very, very high within the judicial system get it, that's the most important thing. And I want this to be encouragement for all of you. And that's why I'm taking the time actually trying to go through some of the meat and potatoes here, because this is a great ruling. 3 of our sister courts have reviewed preliminary injunctions relating to the final rule. The issues engendered great disagreement, but each circuit that has addressed them agrees that the definition of machine gun within the National Firearms Act and Gun Control Act does not unambiguously mean what the government says it means. Each circuit ultimately denied preliminary injunctive relief, and the Supreme Court denied each of the certiorari petitions. And they take an ellipsis of Gorsuch when he denied one of them. Despite these concerns, I agree with my colleagues that the interlocutory petition before us does not merit review. So the Supreme Court never said whether it was or wasn't a machine gun, just there's no merit to review it on these other cases. A divided D.C. Circuit panel determined that the final rule is ambiguous, but applies Chevron deference to the government's statutory interpretation. That's what the D.C. Circuit Court did. The dissent contended that the final rule contradicts the statute's plain meaning. And although the Supreme Court denied certiorari, one justice wrote separately to explain his view that Chevron does not apply because the government, A, first of all, had expressly waived its application. Second of all, it does not apply to regulations bearing criminal sanctions. And third, the final rule directly contradicts the government's previous interpretation. Okay, so they're talking about some circuit said that they were going to use Chevron deference. Now, there's still probably maybe some of you listening saying, hold on a minute, but I don't like bump stocks. I don't have one. This has everything to do with, in my opinion, and if you guys that have been following this stuff, I think in many people's opinions, this has everything to do with the pistol brace ban, the frames and receivers, like all of this stuff that the AFT is just summarily doing. They talk about the divided court in the 10th Circuit. Finally, yet another divided opinion in the 6th Circuit. How they had at first ruled against the government. This was the GOA's case here in Michigan in the 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. They had ruled against the government, but then they heard it en banc and came back and overturned the panel and still was not able to overturn. In addition, and I've done videos on like all of these. If you guys go back and look, maybe some of you saw those videos. In addition to these circuits, the Navy Marine Corps Court of Criminal Appeals consider the final rule in the context of a criminal prosecution for possession of a machine gun. The court determined that under the best reading of the statutory language, a bump stock is not a machine gun. Then they go through and say our primary task is to interpret the meaning of machine gun as defined in USC, so in the code. That's their job, and I agree. And then they say, but here the government has declined to invoke Chevron in any of the lawsuits. So they're saying, how can we use Chevron deference when the government is waiving it? Now, other courts have said even if the government waives Chevron deference still applies. Yeah, it's gotten really messed up in some of these other courts. So they're going through here. I thought this was important. How they're talking about how you cannot just change words in a law. And that's what the ATF did do. They tried to change it from a single function of a trigger to a pull of a trigger. And this addresses that a little bit. The first phrase we consider is, quote, by a single function of the trigger. At the time the statute was passed, function meant action. Webster's New International Dictionary, 1019, 1934 edition. Okay. Thus, the relevant question is whether, this is important because this is them smacking down the ATF just like changing words. A semi-automatic rifle equipped with a non-mechanical bump stock fires more than one shot each time the trigger acts. It does not, as illustrated above. And they talked about that earlier. Now, the government contends that single function of the trigger means a single pull of the trigger and analogous movements. This is big time. I love this. 83 Federal Regulation at 66553. That is, according to the government, function means pull. But that argument fails on its face because a shooter still pulls the trigger of a semi-automatic weapon equipped with a non-mechanical bump stock each time he or she fires a bullet. Oh, I've been saying this for 2 years. Without a bump stock, the trigger activates because the shooter flexes his or her finger. With a bump stock, the trigger activates because the recoil of the previous shot re-engages the trigger and shooters maintain force on the gun's forebody bumps the trigger against the shooter's finger. This is a distinction without a difference. Oh, I love it. This is a distinction without a difference. The end result in both cases is that the trigger is pulled. A semi-automatic rifle shoots a single round per pull of the trigger. And the bump stock changes only how the pull is accomplished. Gun Owners of America, 992F3D, whatever, said even if, this is their previous court case, even if single function meant single pull, the definition would still not include a non-mechanical bump stock. Moreover, even though pulling the trigger can sometimes begin the bump firing sequence, the process was more typically begun by pushing forward on the forebody of the firearm. And that's very true from my experience. For several of our sister courts, and this is where they're doing this in a very judicial way, right? But this is where they're basically going and smacking down these other circuit courts. For several of our sister circuits, however, the plain language is not so plain. For those of you that read legal writing, that's like actually the equivalency of going, doof. For several of our sister circuits, however, the plain language is not so plain. They reason that the single function of a trigger could mean a single pull of the trigger from the perspective of the shooter. Considering the definition of function, then they go through and talk about how different courts were agreeing with the ATF and saying, yeah, a pull, a function. Well, they said the problem with that interpretation is that it is based on words that do not exist in the statute. The statute uses, quote, single function of the trigger, not single function of the shooter's trigger finger. The statute speaks only to how the trigger acts, making no mention of the shooter. The Navy Marine Corps Court of Appeals likewise refused to read words into the statute. And then it talks about the same thing there. So the Marine Corps, Navy Court, as well as this court, is saying, no, you can't just add words to a statute and just change the law. Is that what we've all been saying? So I'm going to skim through here. I will put a link to this document down in the pinned comment if you guys would like to read it. I think this is very interesting, and I wanted me to read as much as this possible to have it here on the record for those of you that are enjoying it live, as well as people that are going to be listening later on. There's some powerful stuff in here that, yes, on its face is to do with bump stocks. But this has to do with a lot of things. This has to do with almost everything. They're literally talking about very, very important underlying issues in here. Saying things like, yeah, you can't, like, if a law says words in it, you can't just change those words. An ATF agency can't just change that and say, well, what these words really mean is something else. It's like, no, the law says what it says, and you need to pass a new law if you want to change the words of a law. That's very, very important. They're also establishing in here, again, Fifth Circuit precedent here, but this is very likely to be what it takes for it to go to SCOTUS. Not sure, but in my opinion, very likely. This also talks about how you should not be able to come back and just use emotional things to have the courts change public policy. And while they talk about how unfortunate the Vegas incident was, and I agree it's very unfortunate, they also say that that doesn't really matter when it comes to the courts. If Congress decides to pass a law, then they have to come back and look at the law. You can't just make new laws because of like emotional pleas from the bench. And it has all of the individual judges' opinions here in the second half, okay, whether they concur or not. But I'm going to read this last part, which is what I did in my original video. If you're just joining now or whatever later, you can go back and just watch my 12-minute video, which kind of tells you the meat and potatoes. But I thought this whole thing was very important. Now, since it appears to me that the only thing that's important right now is the vote for speaker, I'm just going to simply talk about this for another 30 seconds. Because it doesn't seem this is a topic many people are interested in, but gosh, this summarizes so much of the stuff that we're complaining about. And there's a lot of very good arguments in here that hopefully will be used in the United States Supreme Court. And hopefully soon, and hopefully the decision goes in the favor of the Constitution for once. Twice, if you consider Bruin recently. But there's a lot of really good arguments in here for the court of public opinion, which is very, very important. And it's my hope that people don't just like to complain when the ATF tries to ban this, this, and this. Although I know that's what they do, because I read comments sometimes by the thousands that will take that negative energy from complaining and then actually look into this stuff and have things that are going to make good arguments with your friends, with your neighbors, as well as at the same time throughout the United States court system, because it matters. I like this. It said many commentators argue that non-mechanical bump stocks contribute to firearms deaths and that the final rule is good public policy. We express no opinion on those arguments because it is not our job to determine our nation's public policy. The solemn responsibility lies with the Congress. And our task is confined to deciding cases and controversies, which requires us to apply the law as Congress has written it. In defining the term machine gun, Congress referred to the mechanism by which the gun's trigger causes bullets to be fired. Policy judgment aside, we are bound to apply the mechanical definition and apply the definition to a semi-automatic rifle equipped with a non-mechanical bump stock. We conclude that such a weapon is not a machine gun for purposes of the Gun Control Act and National Firearms Act. Chevron deference. This is huge, guys. Like, this is major that they wrote this. Chevron deference likely has no role here either because the government waived it or because it does not apply to the government's interpretation of a statute imposing criminal penalties. Finally, even if the statute were ambiguous, which it's not, the rule of lenity would require that we interpret the statute in Cargill's favor. As Justice Holmes framed it years ago, quote, "It is reasonable that a fair warning should be given to the world in language that the common world will understand of what the law intends to do if a certain line is passed. We cannot say that the National Firearms Act and Gun Control Act give the fair warning that the possession of non-mechanical bump stocks is a crime. The final rule promulgated by the ATF violates the APA, that's the Administrative Procedures Act. We therefore reverse the judgment of the district court and remand with instructions to enter judgment for Cargill." And I would note they put it in all caps for remand as well as reverse. So reverse and remand with emphasis. All right, Linda, do I have any more chats to catch up on here? If you live in Michigan, the session is going to new legislative session is going to start on the 11th of January. The Capitol building is going to be open to the public. The gallery is going to be open. I encourage you guys to come and take part in the legislative process. At least get familiar with the building so you know where to go when you need to talk to your state representative about impending gun control. If you live in another state, just substitute the word Michigan for your state, and it might be a different date. Hopefully it hasn't passed you up yet. I encourage all of you guys to get involved because there's gridlock right now in Washington, D.C., and there's gridlock with the election of a speaker, me not being reprised of the exact current thing going on here. I don't know if we have a speaker or not. I see some chat, but it shows that no matter what ends up happening with this speaker vote, people aren't ready for the status quo right now. People want to shake things up a little bit. I think this is showing that, and even if it does end up where they concede to McCarthy, it might not be as much of a concession as you think. It may be McCarthy massively conceding to them. And if he did that, and he put things on the table that are legitimate, not saying I trust the man, I'm never saying that, I never will say that, but if he legitimately, in a bona fide way, put deals on the table saying, I won't do this, I won't do that, I will do this, I will do that, there's many important issues, that's a victory in and of itself. If you get the establishment to give in to the people, to give in to what the populist Republican Party wants, not the swamp establishment. So either way, I think we have a victory, no matter what here. Either, first of all, or at least I hope, since I don't know what's happening behind the scenes, okay? My hope is, I will say, because I can't say anything for sure, my hope is that it's a victory no matter what. Every day that there's no House of Representatives, it's less death they can rack up. It's less days that they can possibly put their boot on our neck from that chamber anyways. So that's a victory. But most likely, whether we want it to or not, the House is going to go into session. Okay. And if they were able to make the swamp and the establishment concede to some of the more patriotic, some of the better ones, whatever you want to call it within the House, the least worst, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to call them, I would say that's somewhat of a victory too. And I want victories on this level, and I also want victories in all of your hometowns, which is why I encourage you to talk to your local school board members, your township, your city, your county, your state. Go to your state capital, meet your state rep, your state senator, talk to them about these issues, let them know where you stand, because it actually means a lot. The only reason why the people's voice hasn't meant much is because not many people talk about these things. Now, when I say talk about it, it is important to talk about it on the internet. Sure, that's culture. It's important to talk about it to your friends, family, neighbors. Very important. That's culture. However, it's not that simple, and freedom's not free, and it's not even that easy. You have to do a lot more than that. You actually have to go get a hold of these public servants with a pen and paper, hand them a letter, walk up, schedule a meeting, walk up to them, orate it to them. Just doing these massive emails, although I'm glad they do, but when the GOA just does it here, click this real quick, it autofills your info, it's a mass email, doesn't mean a whole lot. In fact, a lot of places will have policies where if they get 10,000 emails from the same form letter, they only count it as one person that was against something or supported something. But I do know, and I'm not guessing this, I literally know this for a 100% fact. When people take the time to meet up with their state representative or state senator face to face, it doesn't just mean a little bit more, it means infinitely more than just filling out a form letter or just calling their staff or just sending an email. So I'm going to do some of that this next Wednesday, January 11th, in my state capital in Lansing, Michigan. I don't know how the other states are doing things, but I assume the capitals are open while you're in session all across this country. At least I hope it would be. I mean, would it be America if the People's House and Senate weren't open to any of the public? I would say no. So, first of all, know who your state rep is, know who your state senator is. I guess I should back up a little bit. Know where your capital city is and where your Capitol building is. And if you don't know, I'm not making fun of you. That's just where you need to start. So, my state rep, Jamie Thompson, she's coming in saying two-way all the way, no matter what, will not compromise, not even 1 inch. And she's told me herself that I said, well, look, I'll be the first person to hold you accountable if you go. She says, please do. You better hold me accountable. So I'm going to go there from day one to support my state rep in protecting and defending the Second Amendment in the state of Michigan and Article 1, Section 6 in the Michigan State Constitution. I'm going to go there and I'm going to defend her and I'm going to support her. And I'm also going to make sure that she's accountable to us and that she's a woman of her word. And I know in my heart that she is, but it's like what Reagan said, you trust, but you still verify. And that's what I want all of you guys to do. Complain to the bad ones. Get behind the good ones. Let them know you have their back and that you'll offer them support when they are exercising the will of the people and standing for the Second Amendment, but you're going to call them out when or if they don't. And when I said you guys are very important when I started this stream, I mean that. But you actually have to do something. Because if you don't, you actually become relegated to nothing if you do nothing. I appreciate the couple super chats that have just come in. Thank you, Threaded, for my pleasure. I appreciate you, man. How's it going, by the way? It was nice hanging out, and Pillbuck says we can do it again next year. Hopefully I'll get to hang out with you soon. Maybe you'll be in the state capitol sometime here. Let me know. I'll be going to the state capitol as much as I need to, as much as I want to, even if I don't want to, but I need to. I'll be going there. So nice to see you, dude. And thanks for the generous channel support. I appreciate it, man. And it looks like we also have a new channel member. Mr. H0661 became a YouTube member. Thank you for supporting the channel. I really appreciate all of the ways you guys support, all of the Patreon supporters, people who are channel members, leave me super chats. Make sure you check out my locals community. I should have said this at the beginning, not the end, but they're doing lots of stuff to lots of gun channels right now, guys. Like, it's becoming like a gun channel from what I'm hearing, allegedly, they're hitting gun channels one after another after another. If I'm not going to stream on a Friday night, I'll tell you ahead of time. If you just don't see me here, you should have already been signed up for my locals a long time ago. I'll be over there to stream. Other platforms that I'm on as well, I'll be working on. But yes, make sure you're checking out my locals community. It's a place you can join for free, or you can support as a free member too, to keep all this content coming. It costs me a lot of money to do all this stuff and a lot of time, but I'm able to do it with you guys helping me out. What's happening, Jane Locke? She says, what time are you going to the Capitol on the 11th? Oh, geez. I'm probably going to try to get there at like 8 a.m. if I can. Something like that-ish. So let me know. Send me a text or whatever. I thought I saw to the corner of my eye that you're going to be there all day too. So I'm sure we'll meet up and see each other, right? So yeah, get a hold of me. Shoot me a text or an email or whatever, Jane. All right, guys. There's lots of stuff that's frustrating going on right now, but there's also quite a bit of good news. I want you guys to focus on some of the good energy. I'm not telling you what you have to do. I want you to focus on some of the good energy that's going on. This Speaker of the House thing shows a lot of where the country's at. This Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is huge, like literally huge. And since it's good news, probably no one will watch the video. Nobody cares, but whatever. I care about good news. I know a lot of you guys do too, because at the end of the day, always has been, still is, and always will be one thing. It's a battle of good versus evil. Evil always has, currently is, and unfortunately always will prevail when good men do nothing. I know a lot of you are good, but it's time. We have to start doing something. Politics is downstream from culture. Get involved in the political process. Get involved with your friends and your family. And let people know, let everyone you possibly can know what America should be. And that you want good to finally prevail over evil for once. And that's the only way it's going to happen. So I want to encourage all of you, and I will be back on here again very soon. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and have a good one.